You ever notice how we're just surrounded by success stories? I mean, everywhere you look, it's winners, winners, winners. But where are all the stories about failure? Well, turns out that's not an accident. It's actually a powerful cognitive bias that's messing with how we see the world. So today, we are going to decode survivorship bias, this huge thinking error that makes us focus on the winners and completely ignore the crucial lessons from everyone who didn't make it. All right, to really get this, we're going to start with a super high-stakes puzzle from World War II. And this story, it just brilliantly shows how sometimes seeing what isn't there can literally be a matter of life and death. Okay, so picture this. You're in charge. Allied bombers are coming back from missions, and they are just riddled with bullet holes. Your job is to make them safer by adding armor. But here's the catch. Armor is heavy. You can only add a little bit. So, looking at the planes that made it back, where do you put the armor? Now, the military's first thought seems totally obvious, right? I mean, the planes that came back had the most damage on the fuselage and the outer wings. So naturally, they thought, okay, let's just slap some more armor right there. Makes perfect sense. But it was completely, dangerously wrong. This is where a statistician named Abraham Wald comes in and has this incredible aha moment. He realized they were only looking at the planes that survived. The most important data wasn't on the planes sitting in the hangar. It was in the wreckage of the planes that never came home. The fact that the returning planes had no bullet holes on their engines or cockpits didn't mean those spots were safe. No, it meant that getting hit there was fatal. The armor needed to go where the bullet holes weren't. And that, right there, is the perfect definition of survivorship bias. It's this mental shortcut we take where we draw huge conclusions from a totally incomplete set of data, the survivors. We forget to look for the silent evidence from the non-survivors. Wald, he saw the missing data. He saw the ghosts of the planes that never returned. But here's the thing. This isn't just some cool story from history class. This exact same thinking error is hardwired into our world today, from business to social media, and it creates these really powerful and misleading myths about what it actually takes to succeed. I love this analogy because it's just so perfect. Trying to figure out the secrets to success by only studying successful people, it's like trying to understand the entire ocean by only looking at the few waves that manage to crash on the beach. You're missing the vast, deep, complex reality just beneath the surface. All right, so this bias is out there building these powerful myths that we see every single day, and they end up shaping our ambitions and even some of our biggest life decisions. Come on, we've all heard this one. You know the story. The genius college dropout, your Bill Gates, your Mark Zuckerberg, who builds an empire from a dorm room. We see these survivors, these billionaires, and we start to think, hey, maybe that's a formula I can follow. But the media loves a good success story, right? So we hardly ever see the silent evidence, the missing bullet holes. Instead, what we don't see is this number, 90%. Yep, that's roughly how many startups ultimately go bust. For every single celebrated billionaire dropout, there are literally thousands of others who tried the exact same thing and failed quietly. We never hear about them, so we just wildly overestimate our own odds. The full data set tells a much, much different story. The whole creator economy is another huge breeding ground for this bias. We see all these influencers sharing their secrets to success, the 5 a.m. morning routines, the content hacks, and it looks so simple, so repeatable. But we're only hearing from that tiny, tiny fraction who actually made it big. And this all feeds into the myth of the overnight success. This bamboo metaphor is fantastic. We see the sudden explosive growth, the viral video, the hit book. But what we don't see are the years and years of invisible work building the foundation. It's just like the bamboo, spending 5 years building this huge root system underground before it suddenly shoots for the sky. And this idea of invisible work, of all the failures that are hiding behind just one single success, is just perfectly captured by another number. 5,127. That is how many times James Dyson failed before he made his first successful vacuum. We celebrate the one brilliant invention, but the real story, the story of innovation, is in those 5,127 non-survivors. Each one was a lesson, but we only ever see the one that finally worked. So you can see how when we just ignore all that failure and only look at the winners, our perception of reality gets dangerously warped. So let's actually look at the full picture with some pretty sobering numbers. Just take the typical startup journey. The timeline is absolutely brutal. About 1 in 5 are gone within the first year. By year 5, it's basically a coin flip. 50% are gone. And after a decade, 70% have just vanished. These are the non-survivors we never, ever hear about.
And this chart, wow, it just paints such a clear picture of the creator economy. We focus all of our attention on that tiny, little 1% slice at the top, the mega influencers. But just look at the rest of the chart. The huge majority are either struggling to make ends meet or are basically earning nothing. The success stories completely hide this reality.
Okay, this might all sound a little bleak, but knowledge is power, right? Now that we can actually spot the bias, let's build a practical tool, a checklist you can use to protect yourself from it. So here's a simple checklist to keep in your back pocket anytime you hear one of these amazing success stories. Just ask yourself, 1, who failed? Like, what's the real success rate here? 2, what hidden advantages were there? Things like luck, timing, connections. 3, how long did this really take? And finally, why did the others fail? What can we learn from studying the startup graveyard? When you start running through this checklist, you're basically learning how to think like Abraham Wald. You're not just looking at the flashy data right in front of you. You're actively hunting for the crucial information that's missing. You're learning to spot the missing bullet holes. So if there's one big thing to take away from all of this, it's this. We live in a world that is just screaming success stories at us. But true wisdom, making better decisions, and having a more realistic view of reality, that all comes from actively seeking out the stories of the silent failures. And that really leaves us with one final question for you to think about. From the career advice you take to the products you buy, what invisible data, what silent evidence is shaping your world right now without you even realizing it?